Friends, welcome back to the Collective's Conversation. So we're having conversations at the intersection of faith and life. One of the great things I get to do besides just having great conversations is introduce you to my friends. I got to sit down with Travis Spencer, who is a pastor friend of mine. We've known each other 20 plus years. Great guy. Wrote a great book that I think you need to get your hands on. So we're going to have a conversation about just things that we love, but also just about his book and how to live a fulfilled life. I think it's really going to help you. So if it does, as always, tag me on Instagram, tag Travis on Instagram. We'd love to have you join the conversation. So without any delay, let's get to our conversation. Friends, welcome back to the Collective's Conversations podcast, where we're having conversations at the intersection of faith and life. Not a new friend, an old friend, somebody we've been connected a long time. I have Travis Spencer. He pastors the Fields Church in Mattoon, Illinois, but he recently just released his first book, titled Wonderful: How to Live a Fulfilled Life in a Very Full World. Travis, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So good to be on the show with you and reconnect ministry-wise. We go from friendship and family things to ministry conversations.
Yeah, we've been connected a long time. One of our big sort of similarities is we are big-time University of Illinois Fighting Illini fans. The recording date is March 20th, so the NCAA tournament is just starting. So we got to ask, do they get past the first weekend?
Well, we have a team that can go really deep in the dance, or they could be the bracket buster for a lot of people. I think I'll be disappointed if we don't go at least to the Sweet 16. And then I think they have so many ups and downs that it'll be tough to get them into the Final Four. But let's get them at least to the 16.
I think I saw just before we came on, Andy Katz had them in the Elite Eight, which I would be very happy with.
Yeah.
But usually it's like if we're Thursday, Saturday, it's a disappointing Saturday for us. At least it has been the last couple of years. So
if they're down by 10,
this year.
I'm not worried at all. If they're up by 15, I'm still worried. Like, that's the team.
Yeah.
Like, we can be down by 10. I'm like, yeah, we're fine. Like, we climb out of this all the time. We're up by 15. I'm like, we just blow this stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's how I felt all weekend. I was like, we got down by 12, and I'm like, yeah, easy. So, well, I do want to get into, you're the lead pastor of the Fields Church, which is now a multi-site church. I'm going to brag a little bit. My son does help lead worship there, so you guys have been instrumental in kind of giving him opportunity. But when we met, you were the youth pastor there. I don't know. I'm not going to say how long. It was a while back.
So I'm starting my 25th year here on staff.
25 years.
That makes me feel old. I don't feel that old, but I look back, they hired me in 1999 to be the youth pastor.
Wow. So as somebody who has stayed in the same place for 25 years, in a culture that people are changing roles and jobs and even careers every 2 to 3, what has been sort of the driving force for you in staying in one place?
Probably was embracing a call to ministry for your life, not like a position or title. So as soon as I hold on to, I'm a youth pastor, I'm called to be a youth pastor. Well, then you you put some barriers on that. And so I was more like, I'm called to Mattoon. I'm called to Central Illinois. I know that God wants to use me in Central Illinois. And I really felt like he gave me a vision for this area. And it started as a youth pastor, but that wasn't the reason I was here. That was the opportunity to serve in. But the vision is, let's make a difference all across Mattoon. Then it blended into Charleston, and hopefully heading into location 3 and 4 and 5. And the driving force is, can I be a light in this area, even though the culture is changing? And I can. The multi-site alignment is really, the vision is aligning with my vision. Is I don't want to just do one thing. I want to make a difference and spread it out. And I would think it's helping. Yeah. It's helping make a difference all across the area.
Which is interesting. I think I don't know that anybody started in youth ministry thinking they would stay in youth ministry. Like, I was a youth pastor when I started, and maybe like naively, I was like, I'll be a youth pastor for 35 years. And thank God I'm not. I'm so out of touch culturally. Like hanging out with young adults is hard enough for me. But I think there is this calling piece that we go, hey, I'm in this for the long haul, and you have been in one place, which is so interesting. What's been maybe the greatest lesson learned from longevity in one place?
Well, you really develop some deep relationships. And when you have good relationships, that's where you earn their trust. And you get to accomplish a lot when you have galvanized people around you to carry on the mission. And the second thing was the impact you have in the community. There's a blessing in longevity when it comes to the community involvement of, when there's something at the schools, like you'd be familiar. There was a school shooting, several years ago at our school. I was the first to get there, cross the police line. No one even asked me to show an ID. It's like, hey, Travis is here. He can help. And I get the opportunity actually to pastor the community because of my longevity. Now, that's not my title. I'm not the community's pastor, but I can take that role on myself. And I know that my longevity has opened those doors.
Yeah. And so what, for our friends maybe who are in a season where they're maybe of year 4, year 5, I think if most pastors make it past year 3, I think they're doing well. What was maybe the tipping point? You said you confessed it 25 years. I'm not going to tell on you, but what was maybe that tipping point? When was it like, hey, we're in this and we're starting to see that the longevity is having these benefits, having these opportunities that weren't there before?
When I started seeing key community leaders attending church because they respected me as a leader, and you started seeing principals, you started seeing business owners, you started seeing just some really key community leaders, and they're like, well, if I have to go to church, I want to go to Travis's because I know him. And then the momentum shifts, because now if teachers and principals are going, the reputation of your church now is spoken to in a lot of circles outside of what I can do. And so my influence into the community, actually, then those eccentric circles get wider and wider and wider. And I noticed the shift when the momentum of the community started peeking in and saying, I think I'm going to go visit the field. I'm going to go there.
Yeah. And one of the cool things you get to do or have been able to do, I don't know if you're still doing it, is you've been the chaplain for the Eastern Illinois University football team. How did that come about? Because that's a deep dive into a community, into a college campus, into athletics in college. That's a unique situation. What allowed that door to come about?
The head coach just popped in one Sunday to visit, and I knew who he was. They hired him. He was just a go-getter. He was an incredible guy, and I saw him come to church one Sunday, and so I just made sure to introduce myself, and that was it. Just like beeline it in the lobby, and then I saw him the second week, and I'm like, Coach, so good to see you here. And he goes, hey, do you think you'd ever want to come and share with the team someday in a chapel? And I think he was just maybe testing me, so I did. And then the second time he said, would you like to do this more regular and be our regular chapel speaker? And then that relationship from chapel speaker changed into, can you be our soul coach? And so I wasn't on the coaching staff, but it was the coaches take care of on the field. I was there for off the field. And so I just started building relationships. And actually, you'd think it has a lot of impact on the players' lives. I probably had deeper impact on the coaches' lives, because those are the ones that I got to, during the day, sit in their office and just say, how's your kids? How's your family? Welcome to the community. Yeah. These guys move to town like every 3 years. They call it the coaching carousel. Like they're never in a new town for 2 or 3 years. So
yeah, because it's division, I guess it's not
it's
one AA, but
it's
FCS
Division One, but it's mid-major. So they bounce out and they go somewhere else.
Right.
So yeah, it was really just, and I think that again, the reputation. The head coach said, I'm going to go check out the Fields Church. I've heard good things about it. And the dominoes started to fall.
So let's talk about the book. You wrote a book, which I am very envious of, I guess, because I've always wanted to write a book, and I have 3 books started. So what finally led you to this point of going, hey, I'm going to do it. I'm going to write the book?
Like, so two big reasons. And so, because we're talking to leaders too, is I had a coach in my life saying, hey, you have a book in you and you're a lead pastor, and be influential in your community, be influential in your congregation. So he didn't tell me what to read or what to write. He just said, every lead pastor needs to write a book. So that was kind of the trigger. But the reality was, he was right. Like, for 25 years of ministry, I have a lot of ideas in my head. I just was never able to like get them out. I have a journalism background. I know how to write. I know how to tell stories. I didn't have the tenacity to finally say, I'm going to do this book. And so for me, I kind of looked at my 25 years of ministry, and I discovered I just wanted to see, this is where I feel like I could make the biggest difference right now if I'm going to be a contributor and an author. And it's, people are filling up their life, and yet they feel very empty on the inside. Their plate is full, but they're empty. And I think that's the big struggle in life right now, is everyone's busy and their plate is full, but when they go home at the end of the day, they still feel empty. And I feel like as pastors, we need to speak into that, because we know the solution is not just calendar management.
Right.
There's much more than that. And so I talked to a lot of people. I social media interviewed, and I really boiled it down to hearing what fulfills their life. And I came down to it is, I want to help people find fulfillment. And I believe that there is a pathway to true fulfillment, and they don't have to have this bloating feeling. In the book, I read this story, and it's our family taking a vacation, and we go on cruises, and I love cruising because I have 3 very grown boys, 2 in college, 1 in high school. They eat like crazy, and for us, it's just a great type of vacation. And if you've ever been on one, it's this big resort floating in the Caribbean.
Right. Rachel and I are taking our first one in June, so we're really excited.
Yeah, and so, it's all the entertainment, all the ports, all the fun, but really it's all the food, and you can just eat whenever you want to. And so I remember sitting on poolside, and my son was Dakota, my oldest. He was next to me. We had books, and we were kind of had my sunglasses on. I'm reading, and next thing you know, he just gets up and walks away. And I say, Dakota, where are you going? He's like, going to get another shrimp burrito. And I laugh, and then I'm like, well, can you bring me back a taco? And so it's like constantly eating. But on those trips, there's always that moment where we say, my stomach hurts. Like, I've eaten too much. My stomach hurts. And I think instead of a stomach ache, I think people have a life ache. Mm-hmm. I think they've put so much into their life that they finally get to the moment and they say, this hurts. Like this, I feel bloated. And so by interviewing people and talking to people, that's when I really decided there's got to be some lanes. There's got to be some areas of life that they can truly find fulfillment in.
Yeah. And so all of us who speak and preach and write and all the things we do as communicators, it usually starts with us, right? So the story starts with us. What were maybe the life aches you were feeling that led you to go, hey, or life aches you'd walk through already to go, I need to get this story out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get so busy in ministry that I don't know if I take care of myself.
Yeah.
And so I know that we can measure the metrics, and we can dive in and try to have all of our systems running, and we can be running a machine, yet we're almost out of fuel and we're on empty. Mm-hmm. And I've felt that several times throughout seasons of my life, that I'm working so hard and I'm still feeling so tired and empty on the inside. And it wasn't until I'm working on my doctorate right now, and I had a class that just on like personal like development and spiritual development, and it talked a lot about soul care.
Yeah.
And I was like, we really need to take care of ourselves. Like, have you ever been on an airplane and obviously you've been on an airplane. We've all been on airplanes, and the stewardess always gives hey, if cabin pressure changes, the oxygen masks are going to come down. And if you're sitting next to a child, make sure you put your oxygen mask on first before you apply it to your child. And every parent's like, there's no way. I want my kid to breathe. I want my kids.
Right.
But the reality is, if we can't breathe, we can't help the person next to us. And as a pastor and a leader, like, if I'm not spiritually healthy, then I'm not going to be able to help the other people around me. And so that's for me personally, the book probably hit home the most on soul care. And then the second is I just had a really difficult year in 2019, and I lost both my parents over a 3 months period of time. Both had cancer. My dad, we knew he had cancer, so we walked through some really difficult days with him having cancer. What we didn't know is 2 months later, my mom would discover through an ER appointment that she had a stomach ache, that she was full of cancer. And so literally within a few months, we were back-to-back funerals with my parents. And during that season, my relationship with my sister just got so healthy, and the time we spent together was so good. And we knew, and I know, without being with people who care about you and with family and with caring individuals, that you're going to have a tough time in life. So another part of fulfillment is people. And it was that moment I'm like, I have to surround myself with some really good people right now because I'm having a really difficult year.
Yeah. And in the book, you start to talk about those buckets that you talk about. And what are the 3 buckets of ache that you kind of identified and kind of feel like have to be filled in order to be fulfilled?
Yeah. So those 3 areas would be your personal soul care. So think about your person, and then the people in your lives, and the purpose of why you're alive. So think
good
your
preacher
person.
Right
there. Yeah, it's all P's. It's perfect.
Like good preaching.
Personal soul care, people in your life, purpose of why you're alive. And but here's the thing is it does sound catchy and cliche, but I took all of the answers from other people and I just asked the question, what brings you fulfillment? Mm-hmm. And it fell in one of those 3 buckets. Like I could easily go this bucket. I didn't have any weird outliers. They were always watching my kids do well. Okay, that's a relational people thing. Yeah. Or I love going on a missions trip. Okay, that's serving people. Or I feel fulfilled when I go to church and I worship God. So there was like every answer fell into one of those 3 buckets. And so I'm like, well, we need to unpack these 3 buckets and help people discover fulfillment in their personal relationship with God, in their relationship with people, and their purpose of why they're alive.
Yeah, and purpose is such a huge conversation. I think you'd have to be living under a rock if you've not seen The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren or heard something about purpose, or even outside the church world, purpose is a huge conversation. So how are people, what would you say would be the starting point? So somebody's sitting here listening and they're going, Travis, I completely understand. I have life aches. My plate is not just full, it's overflowing. I've buffeted too much on the cruise ship of life. What is the starting point for someone who's going, I want to feel fulfilled. I want that wonderful feeling you're talking about. Where do I start?
I think you always start with your current reality. So establish this is what's happening in my life, current reality, and then draw a line that says desired outcome. And so my current reality is I'm working way too many hours, or I don't see my wife very often, or, so what's your current reality? Define what your desired outcome is. And now let's create this pathway. But we're not going to get there if we can't admit where we're at today. Yeah. And so number 1 is figure out your current reality. Now let's find a pathway to get to that desired outcome. And we have to, and then we begin to prioritize, right? Like what matters, what doesn't matter, because everyone's plate's full, but maybe it's full of the wrong things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're parents, right? And I think we're in similar seasons. You got Dakota's in college. You have 2 left at home on the edge of being grown. To maybe the parents out there who their priorities have been kids and maybe not themselves, how have you made a shift to go, hey, I've got to focus on me. I got to take care of my physical well-being, my emotional well-being. It's much the same as your sort of airplane illustration. I'm a bent towards helping people. Sometimes I think it's the best thing to help somebody else before I help myself. But how do we help people go, it's okay to help yourself. It's okay to do the personal care. Where can someone who maybe doesn't feel that start with that?
Yeah, giving yourself permission to be healthy is the best gift you can give yourself. It really is. Like if you want to give a gift to your family, take care of yourself.
Right.
And I tell Joy that, my wife, all the time. It's like, And we purposely take a kidless vacation every year. And it's so funny because, you can tell the kids, this is going to help us be better parents to you guys. They're like, no, you're just going to Florida without us.
Yeah, they don't buy that at all.
They don't buy it. But the reality is a kidless vacation really actually helps you be a better parent, because when your marriage is stronger, your parenting is stronger, you know? And so it really starts back to the source, and it's me, and I have to take care of myself, and finding what fills your cup. So let's take the chaplain thing. The chaplain thing for me, for the football chaplain, which by the way, I'm not currently doing. So, but it was so fulfilling because I loved football. I could take my kids on the sidelines. I was in these rooms with like film rooms, and they're talking all their strategy. I got to be in the locker room in halftime when the coach comes in and just starts yelling at everybody. I mean, it's just great. I loved it.
Yeah.
Did it help me be a better pastor, and did it help the church grow? Like, probably not, actually. It was more for me in that season that there was something that I was so looking forward to run over to EIU and get out on that football field and hang out with those guys. It filled my cup. And so I prioritized that time. Then the other thing, and you might know this about me, there was a season in my life I had to lose, I lost 50 to 75 pounds.
Yeah.
The only way I could do that was I had to prioritize taking care of me, which means I have to prioritize, taking some time and going to the gym, or prioritize, instead of all my meetings at work being lunch meetings, I need them to be coffee meetings. I can't go out to eat every single day.
Yeah.
I'm killing myself here. Right. And so it's really prioritizing if it's meaningful, then prioritize it.
Yeah. So how do you, in your book, or maybe just in your own life, come to this place? Fulfillment feels like Jell-O. Like, you can't really hang on to it. Like, it's one of those things that's sort of not really a concrete measurement, right? So how do we, in our own soul and our own heart, measure what is fulfillment, or how we sense fulfillment in our life?
Yeah, you might not be able to measure fulfillment, that you can have a dashboard on your life. If you say these 5 things, these 5 big rocks are important to me: family, my job, traveling and vacation. Like, if you identify these 5 things fill my cup, then what you can do is create a dashboard or a grade card. Like, use whatever metaphor you want to use and say, I'm currently getting, so I do this. I have 12 areas of my life, and I try to once a month go spend a half a day by myself, a cup of coffee. If it's nice weather, just go out to the lake and sit at a pavilion and walk around, but review those 12 areas, and I give myself a grade. And I was actually doing a 24-hour retreat last fall, and I got a bed and breakfast all by myself. And I did a little bit of my grade card, and I gave myself an F in health, physical health again. I'd let a lot of things slip. And so I looked at that grade. I was doing great on financial budgeting, reading my Bible. Those grades were fine. And I got to health, and I'm like, I'm an F. I'm giving myself an F. I'm just going to do it because I wanted to give myself a D because that sounds better. But I was like, no, right. I'm failing in this area again. And so when you give yourself that grade, you're like, so what are you going to do about this? Mm-hmm. So I met with my doctor and said, I don't want to slip back to where I was at. Like, help me get on a plan and keep me accountable. And so I created a plan, and we're doing well. And I'm probably a C+ now. I really feel like I've made some headway. Good. But it doesn't happen if you don't take a look at your dashboard or your report card.
Yeah, so let's address the dashboard piece and obviously this grade card you talk about. And what we know from anybody you read, consistency is where you win. How then, in this fulfillment piece, in the buckets, in maybe the big rocks, you're talking about prioritize. How is consistency built into those priorities? How do you plan that out, or maybe strategize that? Because it's great to be like, I got an F, I got to do something about it. I'm really good at that. Like, I'm probably going to go run today because I feel like I'm failing in my physical fitness. How do I run next week? And how do I run the next week? And how do I eat grapes instead of a Snickers bar? Or whatever it is. How do we choose consistency or create the discipline to keep the dashboard moving the direction we want it?
Yeah, I think let me two things off the top of my head is you measure what matters. So let there be a metric, like, there's the SMART goals and make it measurable, but let's take health. Okay. I want to, work out 3 times a week. So it's not, I want to lose 25 pounds. Like that's hard. That's a hard measurement because it takes time, but it doesn't take, you can measure 3 workouts a week. And then, so you measure what matters, but you also schedule what matters.
That's good.
So you have to be intentional about looking at your calendar and saying, if this is important to my life, I'm going to give me margin to do this. So if a date night with your spouse is important, then you get it on the calendar. You don't just say, yeah, we need to start going out more. I need to have lunch with my wife more often. Like it's not going to happen. But you sit down and have a conversation and say, what about Saturday morning breakfasts? Can we do that? And so there's also a conversation of bringing someone in and saying, help me figure this out. Help me create accountability. And so if it's with my spouse, it's like, when do we do date night? When does it work on our schedule? If it's my health, I ask my doctor, can I meet with you 4 times a year, every 3 months? I'd like to come in and keep the accountability going. So you measure, you schedule, and then you create some accountability.
That's good. Measure, schedule, and bring in conversation or collaboration. I think that's critical in anything. I think anytime we isolate ourselves, and you talk about these buckets, isolation never is going to bring fulfillment. Like I think that's maybe it's just for me and maybe how I operate. I think anytime I'm struggling in fulfillment, I feel like there's a withdrawal or an isolation even more so. Like to pull back and not be, to use some pop culture language, not be seen, essentially. But you mentioned...
Let me break in for just a moment, because you're right on the money here. Isolation. So as you know, this podcast is being recorded right around Easter. I just been studying the Easter story, and think of doubting Thomas. What happened? As soon as the resurrection day happened, all the disciples were meeting together in a locked room, except Thomas. He pulled himself away. He isolated himself. So separation leads to isolation. And then for him, isolation led to unbelief. Yeah. So some type of a negative pattern. And then it wasn't until it actually says 8 days later, he's back with the disciples again and Jesus shows back up. So at some point he got back into the group. And then with the encounter with God, there was belief again. But I think it all started when he pulled himself away. Yeah. And the moment you need people the most, like when my parents passed away, that was not the time for me to isolate. That was not the time to say, I'm not talking to anyone about this. And so you have to fight against isolation. It's probably the number one tool of the enemy is secrets and isolation. Like, don't talk about it and don't get around anybody that's going to help you. The enemy's always trying to get us to do that.
Well, and I think in our relationship with God, and I think with people, when we isolate or when we withdraw, whichever one it is, because you can isolate and still be in the room with somebody, we act like they don't know the problem. Like, especially with the Lord, and maybe I'm just confessing my own sins here or struggles. Like, I act like God doesn't already know. Like, I'm just going to pull back and like be isolated and act like, God, you, like, he's not all knowing. Like, that's my pretend. Like, you really don't know what's going on. When all along he does. And odds are the people in your life, if you have people in close proximity and people that really care about you, they know as well. I mean, so it's not like we can really hide as much as we think we can hide. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like the Jacari window. It's like when you have spinach in your teeth, everyone sees it and you know.
Oh, yeah.
Like people know. They know what's going on in your life. Like we can try to hide things, but they see it.
Absolutely. And so I think maybe on the other side of this is we need to be people who say something. Like when we see people isolating, we need to step into the gap and go, hey, I see you, you're seen, I see the struggle. So, and just, help people not isolate and show up for people. So how, Travis, can we make a lifestyle of fulfillment? I love these ideas. I love sort of where you're going. How does it become a way we live? I mean, I think the Bible is pretty clear. The Bible wants us to live fulfilled life. Like John 11:11, life abundantly, and that includes not just in heaven, but here. So how can we live this sort of fulfilled, abundant life the rest of our life?
Yeah. I'd go back to those 3 lanes and say, let's just talk the God-filled life. And then and each individual has to say, what are the key ingredients that I want to make sure I put into my life on a regular basis? So I'm making the commitment to read my Bible, pray, church, whatever those are.
Yeah.
But you have to say, okay, so for the soul, it's about ingredients. For the personal people, it's time. Like I've got to schedule time with the people that matter most in my life. And then purpose, it's evaluating, am I still, what I'm doing with the majority of my time, is it fulfilling me and is it honoring God, or am I just wasting? Do I feel like that little mouse running and running and running and getting nowhere? Or do I feel like I'm moving the needle?
Yeah.
And so that goes back to a little bit of a schedule yourself in a life evaluation. I actually end the book on that, about life evaluations, and life evaluations lead to success. And so maybe it's on your calendar. The last day of the month is where you have a personal cup of coffee with yourself and you just do your grade card. And maybe it's with you and a spouse and say, let's do this together, and let's have a date, a breakfast that's all about a little bit of an evaluation. But again, if we measure what matters. And so to make this happen for the rest of our life, we have to get in the habit of looking in the mirror and saying, how am I doing in these areas?
Yeah. How often are you personally changing? You said you had 12 things you're measuring, or 12 big rocks. How often maybe are you, or maybe one of our listeners, evaluating if that rock is still important?
I don't know if I've changed my list of 12 or I've changed my priority of which ones I need to address.
Okay.
So I think that my list of 12 has been the same, but sometimes a few of them go to a back burner because I just need to address one that I haven't touched on for a while. And so the priority changes. I don't know if my list changes. And I think that's the, kind of that discernment, asking the Lord to speak into that. I think in all of this, this is, we're faith-filled people. If we do not have spirit sensitivity in this, let the Holy Spirit speak to us about our lives. Invite the Holy Spirit to, I think we should have high spirit sensitivity when we're evaluating our lives. The Lord wants us to hear some things. Are we willing to listen?
Yeah, that's a really fair statement. So, Travis, I've loved this. It's been great to reconnect. I got one final question here I ask everybody on the show. Since the show is titled The Collective's Conversation, who is one person, historical, present, fictional, or in your real life that you want to sit down and have a conversation with?
I know you asked that. I love that you asked that. I'm so challenged by that. But I look at my life today and kind of what brought me to who I am. And I would say, I don't know if anyone's ever said this to you, Johannes Gutenberg. He invented the printing press in the 1400s. So I have a journalism background. And obviously now, a pastor, Bible degree, working on my doctorate. And it's the blend of printing press and the printing the Bible. And here would be my question is, do you have any idea how much of an impact you would have on the world with the one thing that you were working on? And I just wonder, to sit down and talk to him, he probably is like, I don't know, I just had this crazy idea. I don't know.
One of the coolest gifts I've ever gotten, and it's yet to be framed and hung up, the woman who's leading our worship at the church, was a German missionary, her family was, and she traveled back there about a year ago. They still operate that press, the Gutenberg press, and they have a print of it. It's like 11 by 17 of the book of Genesis from the Gutenberg press. And so it's one of the absolute coolest gifts I've ever gotten. So if you make it to Germany, you can get yourself a copy of Genesis. And I think it's in German. I don't remember exactly, but yeah.
Who cares? That's great.
It's super cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So that's my answer. Sit down and talk to someone who probably was so influential both in journalism and the Bible. That would be a great conversation for me.
That's a great answer. Your book, where can we pick up the book, man?
So the easiest is we have a website called readwonderful.com. Just go to Read Wonderful, or it's on Amazon. It'll direct you there. But for pastors and leaders, I'm actually writing. I'm leading a group right now, a small group discussion. So I'm writing the curriculum as I go. And so by May, we're going to be able to give out free 10-week discussion guides. I preached this series, so we'll give away the here's the 4 messages that I preached if it could help brainstorm some pastors if they want to speak on fulfillment. So right now the book's available. At the end of May, we'll be able to provide the discussion guides and artwork and all that for free. Perfect. Just if we could help churches out.
Awesome.
So readwonderful.com.
Awesome. It's been so great to reconnect, and ILLINI, go Illini.
That's right. Let's go.
All right.
So thanks a lot, Jeff, man. What an honor. I love what you're doing. Keep investing in those young adults, man. What a critically crucial time in their life. So keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you, man.
Take care.
Wow. What a great conversation that was. Thanks for joining us in the conversation. If something from the conversation really stood out to you, would you share it and tag me on social media at Jeff_Pitts_ on Instagram? And we would love it if you would rate and review and subscribe to the show. That just helps us reach more people with these great conversations. And as we always say, you've got a seat at the table. Thanks for joining the conversation.